Book name Love or Lie? The Truth Between Us, written and published by Dr. Prashant. Overview of the book Love or Lie. The Truth Between Us is a story about Leo and Emily, two young people who meet by chance and develop a connection. The story is told from Leo's point of view as he falls for Emily. However, Emily is holding on to a secret from her past that she's afraid to share. Leo must decide whether to stay with Emily after learning the truth about her past, or whether their relationship is built on lies. This is a story about love, trust, and how facing the truth can change everything. Chapter 1. The First Meeting. It was one of those cold, rainy afternoons when the sky felt heavy and gray, and everyone on the streets seemed in a hurry to get somewhere dry. I was soaked, my jacket clinging to me, as I ducked into a small coffee shop I'd never been to before. The smell of fresh coffee and warm pastries hit me as soon as I walked in, and I let out a sigh of relief. Finally, a break from the rain. The place wasn't crowded, just a few people scattered at tables with their laptops and books. I found an empty seat near the window and sat down, hoping to warm up and gather my thoughts. That's when I noticed her. She was sitting in the corner by herself, her back to the wall, with a notebook in front of her. She wasn't scrolling on her phone like everyone else. Instead, she was writing, her pen moving quickly across the page. She had headphones on, completely focused, like the world around her didn't exist. Her auburn hair fell loosely over her shoulders, and the faintest smile played on her lips, as if whatever she was writing made her happy. I couldn't help but watch her for a moment. She seemed different from everyone else in the room. It wasn't just her looks. It was the way she carried herself, calm and confident, like she didn't need anyone's approval. I shook my head, trying to focus on the coffee I had just ordered, but my eyes kept drifting back to her. I started wondering about her. What was she writing? Was it a journal? A story? And why did she look so peaceful when everyone else seemed so rushed? At one point, she looked up and caught me staring. I panicked, feeling my face heat up, but she didn't seem annoyed. Instead, she gave me a small smile, then went back to her notebook. That smile, it wasn't big or flashy, but stayed with me. It felt like it meant something, even if it was just a polite gesture. I wanted to talk to her, but I couldn't find the courage. What would I even say? "Hi, I saw you writing, and thought you looked interesting." No, that sounded ridiculous. Instead, I sat there, silently sipping my coffee and stealing glances when I thought she wouldn't notice. Minutes turned into an hour, and soon she closed her notebook, packed up her things, and left. I watched her walk out into the rain, pulling up the hood of her coat as she disappeared into the city. I felt a strange sense of disappointment. I didn't even know her name, but I felt like I had just missed out on something important. As I sat there, staring at the now empty table where she had been, I made a decision. I didn't know if I'd ever see her again, but if I did, I wouldn't let the moment pass. Next time, I'd talk to her. Little did I know, that rainy afternoon wasn't the end of our story. It was just the beginning. Chapter 2. A Glimpse of Her World. I couldn't stop thinking about Emily after that first meeting. There was something about her that made me curious, like she had an entire world hidden inside her that she didn't share with just anyone. Every time I went back to the coffee shop, I hoped I'd see her again. And then, one afternoon, I got lucky. She was sitting at the same corner table, her notebook open in front of her. This time, I didn't hesitate. "Mind if I join you?" I asked, holding up my coffee cup and giving her what I hoped was a friendly smile. She looked up, surprised, but then smiled back. "Sure," she said, gesturing to the seat across from her. I sat down, and we started talking. At first, it was just small talk, the kind of conversation you have with someone you barely know. But as we spoke, I noticed little details about her. She had this way of pausing before she answered, as if she were choosing her words carefully. She laughed softly, almost shyly, but her laugh felt warm and real. Emily told me she loved writing, and that she spent most of her free time with her notebook, jotting down ideas for stories. "It's like my way of making sense of the world," she said, tapping her pen against the page. "Sometimes it feels easier to write things down than to say them out loud." I wanted to know more about her world, about what made her happy, and what she dreamed about. But every time I asked a question that felt too personal, she would steer the conversation back to something lighter. She didn't talk about her family or her past, and when I asked about her favorite childhood memory, she just smiled and said, "I'll tell you another time." There was a part of Emily that she wasn't ready to share, and I could feel it. It wasn't that she was being rude or cold. It was more like she was protecting herself. I didn't push her. Instead, I let her talk about the things she was comfortable sharing, like her favorite books and the places she wanted to travel. One thing became clear. Emily wasn't like anyone I'd met before. She wasn't loud or attention-seeking, but she had this quiet confidence that drew me in. She seemed perfectly content in her little bubble, but I couldn't help wondering what was keeping her there. What was she afraid of? That afternoon, as we sat in the coffee shop, I realized I wanted to know everything about her. I wanted to be part of her world, even if she only let me see a small piece of it for now. I didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning of a journey that would change both of our lives forever. Chapter 3. Getting to know Emily. Spending time with Emily felt like opening a book you couldn't put down. Each day with her, I learned a little more about her world, but it was like reading only a few pages at a time. She was kind, funny, and full of little quirks that made her unique. But there was always something she kept just out of reach, like a part of herself she didn't want me to see. We spent most of our time together at the coffee shop where we first met, or walking through the nearby park. Emily loved talking about books. She'd light up when she shared her favorite stories, describing the characters as if they were real people. Her passion was contagious, and I found myself hanging on to every word she said. She also loved music. One afternoon, she pulled out her phone and shared a playlist she'd made. "These are my go-to songs when I'm writing," she said with a smile. The songs were a mix of soft indie tracks and energetic pop hits. It was like her, calm on the surface, but filled with bursts of energy and emotion. But there were things she avoided talking about. Whenever I asked about her family, she'd change the subject. If I brought up her past or asked about old friends, she'd give short, vague answers. I could tell there was something she didn't want me to know, but I didn't press her. I figured she'd tell me when she was ready. One evening, we sat on a bench in the park, watching the sunset. The sky turned shades of orange and pink, and the air was cool and crisp. Emily stared out at the horizon, silent for a long time. I could tell she was lost in thought. "What are you thinking about?" I asked gently. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Nothing important," she said softly. It wasn't the first time she'd done that kept her thoughts to herself instead of sharing them with me. It was like she had built walls around her, and no matter how close I got, I couldn't see over them. Still, I didn't want to push her. I liked being with her, even if I didn't understand everything about her. There was something comforting about the way she saw the world, like she found beauty in the little things most people overlooked. She'd point out tiny flowers growing in cracks on the sidewalk, or the way the light hit the leaves just right in the park. "I like how you notice things," I told her once. Emily tilted her head, looking at me curiously. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," I said. "You see things other people miss. It's like you appreciate the details." Her face softened, and for a moment, I thought she might say something important. But instead, she just smiled and said, "Thanks, Leo." As much as I enjoyed being around her, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Emily than she let me see. She was like a puzzle, with pieces missing that I desperately wanted to find. But for now, I was content to enjoy the time we spent together, even if I didn't have all the answers yet. Chapter 4. Hidden Feelings. As the weeks passed, my feelings for Emily grew stronger. Every moment we spent together felt special, even if we were just sitting quietly at the park or chatting about random things. But at the same time, I felt this invisible wall between us. She was holding something back, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get past it. Emily had a way of being so open, and yet so closed off. She would share funny stories about her childhood, talk about her favorite books, and laugh at my silly jokes. But when the conversation got serious, she always found a way to change the subject or brush it off. It was like she wanted to keep a part of herself hidden. I started to wonder if she trusted me. Did she see me as someone she could open up to, or was I just another friend to her? The thought made my chest tighten. I didn't want to be just a friend. I wanted to be someone she could rely on, someone she could share her deepest thoughts with. One day, while we were walking by the lake, I tried to bring it up. The water was calm, and the setting sun painted the sky in soft pinks and oranges. It felt like the perfect moment, to be honest. "Emily," I said, breaking the silence, "can I ask you something?" She looked at me with a small smile. "Of course. What's on your mind?" "I feel like there's a part of you I don't know yet. I mean, you're amazing, and I love spending time with you. But sometimes I feel like you're holding back. Is there something you're afraid to tell me?" Her smile faded, and she looked down at her feet. For a moment, I thought she might finally open up. But instead, she sighed and said, "It's not that I don't want to tell you, Leo. It's just some things are hard to talk about." I nodded, trying to hide my disappointment. "I understand, but I want you to know that you can tell me anything. I'm here for you." Emily looked up at me, her eyes full of something I couldn't quite read. It wasn't sadness, but it wasn't happiness either. "I know," she said softly. "Thank you." We walked in silence after that. I didn't push her any further, because I could see she wasn't ready. But in my heart, I wished she would trust me enough to let me in. I wanted to know her, really know her, even the parts of her that she kept hidden. That evening, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I cared about Emily more than I had ever cared about anyone before, but I also knew that love wasn't enough if she couldn't share her true self with me. I just hoped that, in time, she would. For now, I had to be patient and let her come to me when she was ready. Hidden feelings, I realized, weren't just hers. I had my own too. Feelings I hadn't yet shared with her. Feelings I wasn't sure I was ready to share. But one thing was certain. I wasn't giving up on Emily. Not yet. Chapter 5. The Secret She's Keeping. One evening, Emily and I were sitting on her balcony. It had become our favorite spot to talk. The city lights stretched out in front of us, twinkling like stars. The air was cool, and there was a quiet stillness that made everything feel calm. I thought about how beautiful the moment was, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Emily was holding something back. She leaned on the railing, staring into the distance. Her face looked peaceful, but there was something in her eyes that told me she was lost in thought. I decided it was time to ask her about what had been bothering me for weeks. "Emily," I said softly, "can I ask you something?" She turned to look at me, her expression unreadable. "Of course," she replied. "Why do you always seem like you're carrying something heavy? Like there's a part of you you're not letting me see." I hesitated, unsure if I was pushing too far. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but I care about you. I just want to understand." For a moment, she didn't say anything. She just looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and sadness. Then she sighed and sat down on the chair behind her. "There's a lot about me you don't know, Leo," she began. Her voice was quiet, almost trembling. I've made mistakes. Big ones. And sometimes it feels like I'm still paying for them. I sat down across from her, waiting for her to continue. I could tell this wasn't easy for her, so I didn't want to rush her. When I was younger, she said, her eyes fixed on her hands, I trusted the wrong people. I got involved in things I shouldn't have. At first, I thought I could handle it, but it all got out of control. I hurt people, and I hurt myself too. Her voice cracked, and she stopped to take a deep breath. I wanted to reach out and comfort her, but I stayed still, letting her have the space she needed. I've spent years trying to move on, she continued, but it's not that simple. Sometimes, the past doesn't let go of you, even when you try to let go of it. She looked up at me, her eyes searching mine. That's why I don't let people get too close. I'm afraid they'll see the parts of me I'm not proud of, and they'll leave. Her words hit me like a wave. I could see how much pain she was carrying, how much she had been holding inside. It made sense now. The way she always seemed guarded, the way she avoided talking about her past. She wasn't trying to hide from me because she didn't care. She was hiding because she was scared. Emily, I said, my voice gentle, we all have things we're not proud of. No one is perfect. You don't have to be afraid of me leaving. She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. That's what people always say, until they know the full story. I didn't press her to share more. I could see she wasn't ready. But in that moment, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't give up on her. No matter how long it took, I would show her that she didn't have to carry this burden alone. Chapter 6. The Truth Comes Out. It was a quiet evening, and Emily and I were sitting on her small balcony. The city lights twinkled in the distance, and a cool breeze swept through the air. She looked thoughtful, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea. I could tell something was on her mind, but I didn't want to rush her. Over the past few weeks, I had learned that Emily needed time before she could share what she was feeling. Finally, she broke the silence. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. "There's something I need to tell you, Leo," she said, her eyes avoiding mine. My heart raced. I had been waiting for this moment, hoping she would open up to me. But now that it was here, I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear what she had to say. "You can tell me anything," I replied gently, trying to reassure her. Emily took a deep breath, and for a moment, it seemed like she was gathering all her courage. Then she started to speak. "A few years ago, I made a mistake. A big one. It's something I've carried with me ever since, and I've never been able to let go," she said. Her voice was trembling, and I could see how hard this was for her. "What happened?" I asked, keeping my tone calm. I didn't want her to feel judged or pressured. She hesitated before continuing. "I trusted the wrong person. I thought they cared about me, but they didn't. They used me, and I didn't realize it until it was too late. When everything fell apart, I blamed myself. I felt like it was my fault for not seeing the truth." As she spoke, tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "Since then, I've been scared. Scared to trust people. Scared to let anyone get close. I didn't want to go through that pain again." I stayed quiet, letting her finish. I could feel the weight of her words and the pain she had been carrying. Emily looked at me, her eyes searching mine for a reaction. "That's why I've been distant sometimes. It's not because I don't care about you, Leo. It's because I'm afraid. Afraid of letting you in, and then losing you." Her honesty hit me like a wave. I could see how much it had taken for her to say all of this. For so long, she had been carrying this fear, building walls around herself to keep people out. And now, she was letting me see the side of her she had tried so hard to hide. I reached out and took her hand in mine. "Emily, thank you for telling me this. I know it wasn't easy for you, but I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. Whatever happened in the past doesn't change how I feel about you." She looked at me with a mixture of relief and disbelief. "Are you sure? I mean, what if I messed things up? What if I hurt you?" I squeezed her hand gently. "We all have things we regret, Emily. But those things don't define who we are. What matters is what we do now, in this moment. And right now, I want to be here for you." For the first time that night, Emily smiled. It was small, but it felt like a breakthrough. She wasn't just smiling to hide her pain. She was smiling because she felt seen and accepted. That night, something changed between us. Emily had shared her truth, and it brought us closer. I knew there were still challenges ahead, but I also knew that we had taken an important step forward. Trust wasn't going to come easily, but I was willing to work for it, because I believed that what we had was worth fighting for. Chapter 7. Making the Choice. After Emily told me the truth, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Her secret was heavy, and I understood why she had been so afraid to share it. It wasn't something easy to talk about, and it explained so much about the walls she had built around her. But now, knowing the truth, I had to make a choice. I sat in my room for hours, replaying our conversations in my mind. I thought about all the times she laughed, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about the things she loved, and even the quiet moments when we just sat together in silence. Emily was special to me, but her past was complicated, and I didn't know if I was strong enough to handle it. Part of me wanted to leave. It would have been easier to walk away and start fresh with someone who didn't carry so much emotional weight. But as soon as I thought about leaving, my heart ached. Emily had been honest with me, even though it terrified her. That had to mean something. She trusted me with the part of herself she tried to hide from the world, and I couldn't ignore that. I thought about what love really meant. Was it about finding someone perfect, someone without flaws or mistakes? Or was it about accepting someone for who they truly are, even the parts they were afraid to show? I realized that love wasn't about perfection. It was about being there for each other, especially when things got tough. The next day, I went to see Emily. She looked nervous when she opened the door, like she was expecting me to say I couldn't do this anymore. But I didn't. Instead, I took her hand and told her how I felt. "Emily," I said, "I don't care about your past. I care about you. We all make mistakes, and what matters to me is who you are now. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, I saw the weight she had been carrying start to lift. She didn't say anything at first, just nodded, and held onto my hand like it was the only thing keeping her steady. That moment changed everything for us. It wasn't easy, and it didn't magically fix all our problems. But it was the start of something real. We both knew that love wasn't just about the good times. It was about standing by each other, even when it was hard. Emily wasn't perfect, and neither was I. But together, we decided to face the future, knowing that we could get through anything as long as we had each other. In the end, I chose to stay because love isn't about avoiding pain or running from the truth. It's about choosing someone, flaws and all, and building something strong and honest. And that's exactly what Emily and I did. Chapter 8. A New Beginning. With the truth out in the open, things felt different between Emily and me. The wall she had built so carefully began to come down, brick by brick. It wasn't easy. Trust doesn't magically fix itself overnight, but for the first time, I could see her as she truly was. We started small, taking things one step at a time. She'd share a memory she had kept hidden for years, and I'd tell her about my own fears and mistakes. We learned to laugh at the awkwardness of starting over, and in those quiet moments, I realized something. Love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. Emily began painting again. I'd watch her lose herself in the colors, her eyes brighter than I'd ever seen. She started letting me into her world, piece by piece, and I felt lucky to be part of it. One evening, as we sat under the stars, Emily turned to me and said, "Thank you for staying, for not giving up on me." I smiled. I didn't stay because I had to. I stayed because I wanted to. From that moment on, it felt like a fresh start. We weren't just two people figuring things out anymore. We were partners, ready to face whatever came next together. This wasn't the end of our story. It was only the beginning. A new chapter in our lives, one built on trust, love, and the truth that brought us closer than ever before. Chapter 9. The New Beginning. New Beginning is the final chapter that brings closure and signals the protagonist's complete emotional and personal transformation. It marks a true shift from the past and sets the stage for the future. This chapter is about embracing what's ahead with confidence and hope, building a life that is independent, enriched by self-discovery, and open to new possibilities. It's not just about moving on from a relationship. It's about flourishing in new ways. 1. Deep reflection and acceptance of the journey. The protagonist reflects on everything they've been through: the heartbreak, the self-discovery, the struggles, and the healing process. This reflection is crucial as it shows how far they've come. They realize that every difficult moment, every tear shed, and every painful decision was a step toward personal growth. They understand that they are no longer the person they were at the beginning of the story. The protagonist has transformed from someone who felt lost and broken to someone who feels whole, even without the relationship that once defined them. This self-realization is crucial for closure, as it allows the protagonist to fully accept both the past and the lessons it taught them. 2. Reaffirming new beliefs about love and self-worth. At this stage, the protagonist's view of love has evolved. They understand that love isn't something that can be forced or controlled. It's about mutual respect, emotional health, and shared growth. They now know that love starts with self-love. This newfound understanding of their own worth, without needing validation from another person, is a key part of their transformation. This internal shift sets the foundation for future, healthier relationships. They are no longer defined by their past relationship. Instead, they are empowered by their journey and the lessons they've learned about both giving and receiving love. 3. Taking action toward new beginnings. The protagonist's decision to move forward is now more than just an emotional release. It's a physical manifestation of their change. They might take significant actions that represent their new beginning. This could involve making a big life change, perhaps relocating to a new place, starting a new job, pursuing a long-neglected dream, or even reconnecting with lost passions. It's an outward reflection of internal shifts they've gone through, symbolizing a break from the past and the beginning of something new. The protagonist may feel nervous or uncertain about the changes, but there's a sense of excitement because they are finally taking control of their future. 4. Opening up to new relationships. While this chapter is not about rushing into another romantic relationship, the protagonist is now open to the possibility of love or deeper connections. They may meet someone who represents a fresh start, someone who challenges them in healthy ways, teaches them new things, or simply brings joy without the emotional baggage of the past. This doesn't necessarily mean they will start a romantic relationship right away, but it's a sign that they are no longer closed off or afraid of opening their heart again. Alternatively, the protagonist may focus on the relationships that are already in their life, deepening their friendships and familial bonds. They now understand that love can take many forms and doesn't always have to be romantic. 5. Embracing the future with hope and possibility. The closing moments of the chapter reflect the protagonist's growth into someone who is hopeful about the future. They no longer carry the weight of their past mistakes or regrets, as they have made peace with their journey. There's an underlying optimism about what's to come, knowing that they are capable of handling whatever life throws their way. The protagonist has learned how to embrace uncertainty not as something to fear, but as an opportunity for growth and new experiences. They've learned to live in the present, not weighed down by past heartbreaks or fears of future failures. 6. A symbolic gesture of moving on. The chapter might include a symbolic act that helps the protagonist embrace their new life, such as donating or letting go of personal items that once held emotional significance, like gifts from their ex. This gesture isn't about erasing memories, but signifies the final release of the past. It's about making space for new experiences, new relationships, and new possibilities. Emotional arc. The protagonist's emotional state evolves throughout the chapter, from a place of contemplation and reflection to one of confident acceptance and renewal. At the start, they may feel a bit uncertain about what the future holds, but by the end, there's a sense of calm and strength. They are no longer stuck in the past or grieving the relationship, but are instead empowered by the lessons they've learned. They are ready for whatever new opportunities life presents, knowing they have the emotional resilience to navigate them. In short, Chapter 9, the new beginning represents the protagonist's final shift from healing to thriving. It encapsulates their emotional and personal growth, showing that letting go of the past has allowed them to embrace their future with hope, confidence, and excitement. This chapter marks the protagonist's readiness to move forward, no longer defined by the past, but empowered by their new perspective on love, life, and self-worth. Chapter 10. Love Without Limits. Time has a funny way of showing you what really matters. Months passed, and the fears that once held Emily back seemed smaller now. She smiled more, laughed louder, and let herself dream again. Seeing her grow, seeing her finally free from the weight of her past, made me realize how far we'd come together. One day, Emily surprised me with something that took my breath away. She handed me a canvas, her latest painting. It was of a sunrise, a vibrant burst of colors breaking through the shadows. At the bottom, she had written, "For Leo, my light." I didn't know what to say. For someone like Emily, who had kept her feelings locked away for so long, this painting was more than a gift. It was her heart, finally open, finally free. We decided to leave the city for a weekend, just the two of us. We drove to the countryside, where the world felt quieter, simpler. Standing on a hill, with the wind in our hair, Emily turned to me and said, "I want to stop being afraid. I want to live, really live. And I want to do it with you." Hearing those words, I knew there was no going back. Whatever challenges came our way, we would face them together. Our love wasn't perfect, but it was real. It had survived doubts, fears, and the weight of secrets. From that moment on, we promised each other something simple but powerful. No more walls, no more lies, only love without limits. And for the first time, it felt like we were both finally free. Chapter 11. Forever and Always. Life didn't suddenly become perfect, but it became ours, messy, unpredictable, and filled with moments that felt like magic. Emily and I learned to lean on each other in ways we hadn't before. She'd pull me out of my head when I overthought things, and I'd remind her to breathe when her doubts crept back. One evening, while walking along the river, Emily stopped abruptly. The city lights reflected in the water, casting a warm glow around us. She turned to me, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Was it fear? Excitement? "I need to ask you something," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Anything," I replied. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a bracelet, simple but beautiful, with a charm shaped like a sunrise. "I know this isn't the usual way people do things," she said, her cheeks flushing, "but I don't want to wait anymore. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Leo. Will you stay with me? Forever?" I was speechless, not because I didn't know my answer, but because of how much it meant to hear her say those words. This was the same Emily who once struggled to even admit she cared for someone, now asking me to be part of her forever. I took the bracelet from her hand and slid it onto my wrist. "Forever and always," I said, pulling her into a hug. That night, under the stars, we didn't need anything else. No fancy plans, no perfect moments. Just the promise we made to each other, to keep choosing love, no matter what. As we walked back hand in hand, I realized something profound. Love is not just a feeling, it's a decision. A decision to stay, to fight, and to believe in something bigger than yourself. And with Emily by my side, I knew I'd made the best decision of my life. I am happy in my relationship. What's about your relationship? Share your relation problems and love stories in comment box. And for more videos, please like, share, and subscribe our channel for more amazing content.